We'll be right back. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Revelation Hour. Welcome to our lovely Fireside chat. This is the next one of the month of August. I hope that you enjoyed the previous one that we've done. We've packed with a lot of things this evening, so please do have your question ready as we're about to embark on it. But just to remind you, we're actually available on a different platform. Obviously, our YouTube channel is live this evening. We're also on Meta, and we also have an account on Instagram, all social platform. I'm trying to remember all of them, but I think it's a bit difficult for me to do so. Really, just to remind you as well, some of the previous chat that we had a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, we had John Bostock to talk to us about ballers in God, which was very, very insightful. We also had Sabrina and her daughter to really talk to us about how to raise a rising star as a mother, which was very, very inspiring in that sense. But today, we are going to look at a different topic, an amazing organization. I had the pleasure years ago to kind of work a little bit with this organization, and they've been doing some tremendous work in that sense. But before we do that, let's just watch the clip.
Christian Concern is passionate about seeing the love, justice, truth, freedom and hope of Jesus at the heart of society. We know that Jesus is Lord of all. That doesn't just mean in our personal lives, but in our churches, in the courts, on the television and in Parliament.
So we seek justice, defending Christian freedoms in the legal system and campaigning for just, righteous laws.
We speak truth, taking every opportunity to champion the goodness of God's pattern for our lives, our families, and our society on television, radio, online, and in the newspapers.
And we bring hope, helping the world to see how much better things can be when we live in line with God's beautiful design for our lives.
Well, I pray that the church would recognize what they have in Christian Concern.
Yes, it is Christian Concern today, and with us we have Sean Redfearn. Good evening, Sean. How are you?
Good evening, Jean-Marc. Yes, I'm well. Good to be with you.
Good, fantastic. It's such a pleasure to have you around this evening to really kind of talk to us a little bit about Christian Concern, and pretty much we're going to try to see whether we can extract some of the cases that you guys are working on, but we will try our best in that sense. But Sean, just tell us a little bit about you, your part in the organization, and then maybe we can actually have a look at some of the organization and what they stand for, really, when it comes to Christian Concern.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've known our CEO, Andrea Williams, who was in that video, for longer
Yeah.
than I have. I joined Christian Concern a couple of years ago. Your viewers may be able to detect an accent. I moved over from New Zealand 3 years ago after deciding to pursue ministry, full-time ministry. I'd been at Bible college prior to that and was a youth worker, and moved to London to study theology a little bit more, and then joined the Christian Concern team. And for the last 2 years, I've been in their communications wing, so helping to basically get the information out there. There's a lot that goes on in the organization, and I'm sure we'll get into the details of that later, but that needs to get out into the news feeds and into the churches and into the eyes and ears of people, and that's what our communications team does at Christian Concern. And I'm part of that team, working on social media, on emails, getting that information out to supporters and on our website as well. And it's been a real joy. Like I said, it's been 2 years of busyness and lots going on in this nation, things to do with faith and policy,
Yes.
and really, really needing a Christian voice. So
Mm.
there's been lots to speak into and lots to fight for, and it's been a real privilege to serve on the Christian Concern team for the last 2 years.
Well, that's fantastic. And obviously, I was going to ask you this question. How important has Christian Concern be over the years, as you mentioned, about be that voice, that Christian voice in a country?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest benefits of Christian Concern is bringing Christianity a good defense in the UK. I'm a football fan. I think you are too, Jean-Marc. And
Yes.
if you're gonna succeed as a football team, you need to start strong with a good defense. And so
Mm,
at Christian Concern, I think our part of our job is to bring that protection to Christians across the nation and to make sure that their freedoms are protected, to share the gospel and to proclaim the hope that is found in Jesus Christ. And so
mm,
our caseload is only getting bigger as Christians are continuing to face difficulties in their various vocations, for standing firm in their faith. But that's why we exist. We want to help Christians to be bold and to proclaim that hope of Jesus, and we will help them legally. We've got a big legal wing again, which we'll get into a bit later, but
mm,
also proclaiming and declaring the hope of Jesus, not just legally, but also in the media. Based in London, we get plenty, or well, Andrea Williams in particular, our
mm,
CEO, and some others will get plenty of opportunities. We're really blessed with the opportunities that we get to share the Christian truth in the media space, and also being so close to Parliament as well. We have a strong policy team, often working around the clock to pull
mm,
together briefings and to inform MPs about what's going on in Parliament and positions that we need them to take to
mm,
defend justice and proclaim life. And that's what we bring to this nation. The the needed work and energy to defend Christian freedoms in this land,
mm,
and therefore to defend justice for all people, as
mm.
we see defined biblically.
Well, we're going to come into the organization in a minute. I'm just a very quite conscious and knowing that Christian Concern has been working on so many cases over the years, and I really wanted to kind of touch on one of the cases that I wanted first to begin to discuss it, which is the Uxbridge Street ministry case. But before we do that, let's just watch a short clip of it.
Nobody wants to be found to be in a position where you are breaking a law, especially as a Christian. But what the council were trying to do was to paint us with the people who just come to litter the whole of the town center with one brush. And we're saying, no, I think you need to separate it. When I heard that, it concerned me, because that is how going out there and being able to reach out to people will have been cut short by this PSPO.
Yes, our church is a missional church. We go to the town center to go and witness. We stop people, speak to them, and I've seen a lot of people stand there and give their life to Christ on the spot.
The idea of finding out if I take a few tracts from my house and just talk to people is going to become a criminality as set out under the PSPO. That alone made people step back from not wanting to do outreach. And for me as a pastor, that is concerning. And that should be concerning to anybody.
Very interesting case, I believe. Can you give us a little bit of a background about this case? I'm not sure that our listeners are quite very familiar to this case, but we have seen a lot of issues similar to this case, so it'd be interesting to hear your take on all of this.
Yeah, those preachers there were part of a church called the Kingsborough Centre over in northwest London, and they're well known for their service to the community and supporting the community and running various soup kitchens and also gospel outreach. And they have a legacy of reaching people on the streets with the hope of Jesus. But recently, there was this thing called a public spaces protection order, which the video alluded to, and we've seen this. They're called PSPOs for short, and we've seen them come up more recently and be problematic for the issue of abortion in particular, where these PSPOs or these safe zones or whatever you want to call them are placed around clinics to stop Christians from praying outside of clinics and declaring their faith in the hope of saving the unborn. But we've seen these PSPOs, which have been used to block Christians from praying against abortion, now applied to street preachers. And so these preachers that you saw in the video over in Uxbridge, like I said, they're well known for their legacy of gospel outreach into the community, but this outreach was suddenly deemed almost overnight as antisocial behavior and kind of
Wow.
lumped in wholesale with other things, like drinking in the streets or urinating or littering,
Wow.
and proclaiming the gospel was brought down to that level. And so these preachers, they woke up one day and they couldn't go out and share the news of Jesus without fear of being arrested. And so they got in touch with us and our legal center. I'm not a lawyer, like I said, I'm in the communications team, but our legal team were glad to support them. And by God's grace, we were able to get that ruling overturned so that now, as of today, um, these preachers can continue to share the gospel of Jesus in the streets, and it's not classed as antisocial behavior. There is still a PSPO, if your viewers can remember what that means, around things like littering and drinking and so on. So antisocial behavior is still banned in the area of Uxbridge, but street preaching has now been taken out of that definition because of the work of our legal centre. And I think the Uxbridge case really shows you the importance of using your voice and speaking up
Mm,
when there is injustice, particularly against Christians, because
mm,
when you can take a stand, the Lord can use that, and you can expose hypocrisy or short-sighted thinking. And as I say, by God's grace, the preachers have
mm,
been allowed to continue their ministry. But certainly, it was a concerning ruling to say that
mm.
sharing the gospel and trying to reach people with the hope of Jesus is antisocial.
So how long this case was going on for, and when the actual proceeding started, in a sense, if you can remember?
Yeah, it was earlier this year, and the Uxbridge Church, Kingsborough Centre, they acted pretty swiftly, and so as the video said, people weren't wanting to, to be arrested for talking about Jesus, so they got in touch with us very
Mm,
quickly, and our legal team have a very strong track record with street preachers actually, and so they were able to act swiftly, and I would want to say that it was resolved within the space of a month or two. You can go to the articles on our website to work out the exact timing, but
mm,
if my memory serves me correctly, the swift action meant that things didn't drag on as legal cases sometimes do, and as some of the legal
mm.
cases that we'll talk about later have done.
Yeah.
This case in particular was a lot more swift because of the action of the preachers and their boldness to stand up to the injunction and their partnership with us.
Mm. And what do you think? What impact do you think this kind of overrule turn has probably an impact on any other area? Because we have seen over the last, as you said, the last few years, and very concerning. That is a way of street evangelism is something just sharing the gospel, really, pretty much. And we have seen people be harassed, people be arrested at times, and the fact that that's been overturned in Uxbridge, do you think that that's it's been having an impact on other boroughs of the in London and especially in the country?
Yeah, you would hope it would set a precedent. Every successful victory or legal overturning, you would want to set a precedent in other areas. And as I said before, a lot of our legal cases are hard work and long work. But with our legal centre's relationship with street preachers, we found that across the country, when we have challenged a street preacher's arrest or a court injunction on an area, let me just differentiate that the PSPO and the Uxbridge Church was one of a kind, and I don't think we've seen anything quite like that before. But with other street preachers as well, they've faced arrest for challenging the Quran or
Mm,
LGBT or something like that. But we have found that swift action and calling for injustice and defending the rights for Christians to express their speech has seen things be overturned. And so again, it comes back to that principle of
mm,
standing for justice and defending the rights that you have in this country to express your Christian belief. And
mm,
at least with street preachers, we've found that standing up has proven successful. That's not always the case with Christians and other vocations. Often the legal cases can drag on a lot longer, but
mm,
certainly with street preachers, it is worthwhile to get in touch with us if you find yourself in trouble because you
mm,
have more rights than you think. And with Uxbridge in particular, yeah, we would hope it would set a precedent. As I said, the PSPO in Uxbridge was the first of its kind, I believe, and hopefully the victory or the overturning would give other councils and boroughs just that differentiation that the gospel shouldn't be classed as
mm,
antisocial behaviour.
mm. That's fantastic. I mean, it's good to hear that the justice has been served in that sense as well. The next case that I want to touch on, which is a very interesting one, it's called the Darlington nurse case. And again, let's just play the clip first, and then we can just kind of dwell into this case, which is quite interesting.
It just makes me feel on edge. You come into work, you're scanning the changing room before you start to undress. It's just uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.
It's disgraceful that nurses are ending up in tears prior to their shift. I mean, we are there to be an emotional support for our patients who are about to undergo surgery. And it's very difficult to do that if you're in a state of distress from having to change in front of a male.
We don't have any issue with trans people. We just want a safe space for us, a female-only space for us to get changed.
Now I know the trust policy. Anybody can be
Well,
in there.
that's the problem.
You know, anyone can identify as female can use that changing room.
I don't want to get changed in front of a biological man, and I don't want to see him getting changed neither. That's not what I want to see when I come into work.
And we're just wanting to talk about this and raise this issue so
Yeah.
that women are aware that there may be policies in their workplace, particularly in the NHS. We want other nurses to be aware of what their gender policy is.
Very, very interesting indeed. And again, this is probably a little bit more controversial to the fact that this is something which is quite common. Obviously, our society has moved over decades in terms of, accepting the element of LGBT and trans as well. So just tell us a little bit about what happened then, the Darlington nurse cases. Why is it called the Darlington nurse cases? And just to give us a bit of a background of what exactly happened in essence.
Yeah, the Darlington nurses are another of our clients, and they're an example of a client that we have that aren't street preachers. So they are nurses. They work for the NHS, and Darlington gives the name away that they're based at the other end of the country, further north. But they turned up to work one day, and they, as they say in the video, they noticed that there was a biological male wanting to use their changing room with them, and seemingly quite proud about the fact that he was still male. He boasted about being active and trying to get his girlfriend pregnant, and encouraging the nurses to get changed in front of him. Understandably, the nurses raised a complaint, and they said, we don't feel safe. We don't want to get changed with a man. And it's very interesting that we're at a place in society where our legal team and these poor nurses are having to fight for their right to use a woman's only changing room. But sadly, as I said before, with street preachers, we act swiftly, and often we see victory. This is sadly an example of a case that can drag on a little bit more. So I think about a year and a half ago, maybe even in 2023, the nurses turned up to work with this man identifying as Rose, using their changing room. And as I said, they challenged that, but the NHS responded to their challenge and said that they just needed to get educated and basically get with the modern times and accept the fact that this man could use their changing room. And so the case is still ongoing, and I think we're waiting till October for the next hearing at the Newcastle Employment Tribunal. And even in light, back in April, I don't know if your viewers are aware, but there was a Supreme Court ruling. You can't go any higher than the Supreme Court, but there was a Supreme Court ruling that said that women are to be legally defined by their biological sex. But even in light of that ruling, the NHS, at least this trust, seems to be moving slowly on that ruling, and still requiring the nurses to be accepting of the fact of this male using their room. And in fact, the nurses were so uncomfortable, of course, they couldn't use the room. And the man got to stay. He was able to keep using the female changing room. The nurses essentially had to use a makeshift cupboard as a changing room. And that was the last I remember about their situation. But as I say, the hearing is ongoing. The case is ongoing. I think the next hearing is in October. But it gives you an example of how these legal cases can go on for a long time.
And also it can have an emotional impact on all of this as well, because I think obviously by watching the video and seeing what they're talking about, it's quite shocking. think that. But why is it that NHS is taking so long to respond, despite the Supreme Court ruling this new thing? Why the NHS taking so long to actually kind of change the system?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of the $64,000 question in many ways, and I was asked it before because it should just be straightforward, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's a Supreme Court ruling, and so that should immediately filter down. I actually asked Andrea, our CEO, this very question, and it seems to be the case that with these really big organisations like the NHS, they things can take time for change like
Mm,
that to come. We would hope, and we will continue, obviously, to advocate for the Darlington nurses that
mm,
eventually, this policy will come into place. But the only answer I can give about why there is this buffer period when there shouldn't be is that ideology can take captive organizations, and
mm,
sadly, we are at the point in civilization or in history where some people and people in positions of power believe that men can become women and women can become men, and so
mm,
ideology does take people captive, and the NHS, or this trust at least, of this wing of the
mm,
NHS dragging its feet on the Supreme Court ruling is an example
mm,
of what can happen
mm.
with an ideology taking hold.
I guess you're right, and it's also depend on the organization. I mean, there was about a few days ago there was an article on Virgin where we actually beginning to adopt this ideology to go back, males and female and male based on your biological sex, and so they kind of separated. I remember when they were bringing those mixed changing room in some of the workplaces, and one they saw a backlash of people and so on, they removed it, and they reverted to the old ways of changing room for male and changing room for female. It'd be interesting to potentially go back to this case later on in the year, when we understand what's happening as well, and see, because obviously if it happened in Darlington, it must be happening in other places, especially with the NHS Trust. If you're talking about ideology, it must be quite ingrained in some of the other trust as well. So it'd be interesting to see. Are they the only one that actually raised those cases, or not? We don't know, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I am glad that you raised this case, because even though it's ongoing, that is often the case with with legal. But the
Mm,
Darlington nurse is probably our most publicized case, arguably, and it's certainly got the attention on social media. And so the general public would probably be most familiar with the Darlington nurses out of all our clients, and even J.K. Rowling has voiced her
mm,
support for them. And not just that, the nurses themselves have been to Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party,
mm,
and Wes Streeting as well, the Health Secretary. They were able to meet with these people and explain their situation
mm.
to try and reverse the trend. I think, if you ask me, I mean, I don't know much, but I would say eventually you would expect things to turn back towards common sense on this issue, but it's
Mm.
still going to take some time.
It's still a big fight as well. I can see there's such a big fight, and obviously there's the element of nurses in NHS Trust, and also element in primary school, which we potentially can touch in some of the cases briefly later on in that sense. Another case that I want to mention as well, which is quite an interesting one, this one, because it is kind of a little bit closer to home, I would say, is the sorry, but I'm just getting the screen right. Hopefully the screen can. Here we go. The Bernard Randall case. Let's just play this short clip as well, and then we can discuss that a little bit more detail.
The situation I've been put in is so absurd. How can the Church of England bar one of its own clergy from ministry, from preaching, simply because he taught what the Church of England teaches? Marriage should only properly be understood as being a lifelong, exclusive union of a man and a woman. This is only about the sermon. There's no concern about any actual behaviour with anybody. There's no evidence I've ever behaved inappropriately. There's no evidence of anything that I've ever done wrong. It's just about the sermon. All I was doing was saying the Church of England's teaching is positive and you may accept it. And so, I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologise for a sermon which says you may accept the Church of England's teaching. I was ordained in the Church of England to proclaim the Church's teaching. I can come in, I can sit and worship in the congregation, but I wouldn't be allowed to sit here at the front as a minister. I wouldn't be allowed to go up to the communion table to preside over the Lord's Supper. My fear is what has happened to me is what will happen to lots and lots of people 5, 10 years down the line. So 5 years on, they still haven't told me specifically what the safeguarding concern is. And I've asked repeatedly, show me in the policies, in the guidelines, what this is supposed to be about. What have I done wrong that relates to safeguarding?
Interesting Bernard Randall case. Tell us a little bit about this case. What exactly happened?
Yeah, this one might take a little bit longer to explain. Along with the Darlington nurses, Bernard Randall would be right up there with our most publicised cases, and people are probably most familiar with Christian Concern's work, because of either the Darlington nurses, but maybe also because of Bernard Randall, because of how long his legal case has gone on for, and because of how absurd it is. So he said 5 years in the video. By the date of this recording, it's now more than 6.
Wow.
Back in 2019, he was a chaplain in a Church of England school, and he was going to preach in the chapel service to the students, and he'd been aware that a pro-LGBT organization, Educate and Celebrate, who have since been defunct because they have had numerous cases of patrons within their hierarchy, in some cases going to jail for paedophilia. But anyway, back in 2019, this pro-LGBT organization, Educate and Celebrate, had been promoting certain doctrines in the school, which Bernard Randall was aware of, and as a faithful minister, in a Church of England school, he identified in the sermon that he could say something. He didn't actually say much. He was very moderate in what he said, and viewers can go to our website and watch the exact sermon that saw him sacked and have to go through this now 6-year legal case. He said to the students that you don't have to accept any ideology that's thrown at you. You can test what you're taught. The teaching of the Bible is that marriage is between one man and one woman, but we all have to come to our own conclusion on the matter. That's all Bernard Randall said. He didn't force an ideology down anyone's throat, but he was subsequently sacked. He was referred to counter-terrorism for what he said. He was referred to the Teachers Regulation Service. I can't remember exactly what they're called, and banned from preaching, as he said in the video, by the Church of England. Now, 6 years later, the counter-terrorism unit. It's funny just to talk about prevent the Teachers Regulation Service. They've all cleared his name, and they're okay with him returning to ministry. But the reason his legal case is still ongoing is that the Church of England refused to return him to ministry because they think that his teaching that marriage is between one man and one woman, which is Church of England teaching, is too dangerous for him to go to the pulpit or him to return to the pulpit. And so currently, the Church of England is the only organization that has anything against Bernard Randall, and they are the sole reason that he is prevented from returning to ministry. And just watching that video, actually, I realized I said something before which might bring about a question for your listeners, which is that we have an exceptional record with street preachers, and that we're able to clear them, and that's true. But your listeners might ask, well, what about Bernard Randall?
Yes,
he's a preacher, and yet he's having to suffer the longest legal case out of all of them. How does that add up? And it's actually the absurdity of the situation, which very sadly brings the answer, and that's that the Church of England are the ones that are preventing Bernard Randall from returning to ministry. Street preachers, obviously, they head out on the streets, not under any authority of their own accord to share the gospel, which is great, and we need people to hear the good news. Bernard is under the authority of the Church of England, and so being under their authority, they have, as I've said a couple of times now, banned him from preaching in Church of England services. And so that's the difference between Bernard Randall, who is a preacher, and street preachers, is that Bernard Randall was under an authority in the Church of England, and that's why his legal case is still ensuing. And and we're continuing to fight. It's cost Christian Concern an awful lot of money. We provide all our legal services to our clients for free, and we
Wow.
rely on the generous giving of supporters, and
Mm,
even more than that, on God's goodness. And the Lord in His kindness has sustained us for so many years. Because
mm.
legal cases, I'm not a lawyer, but even I know that legal cases are expensive. And it's cost us a lot of money to stand with Bernard for these years,
Mm.
but you need to, because if the Church of England cannot stand for a minister to preach truth from the Bible,
Well,
if we're not going to stand, then who is?
yeah, I was going to say, which is a quite interesting that because he has just spoke what the Word of God says, and you would
Mm.
expect, you know, from the Church of England to look back into and say, okay, then just you can get back now. But the fact that they're actually dragging their heel to release him or to allow him to go back, that is quite interesting. But I'm very curious about this terrorism act on it. What are they actually? What was in actually convicted through the terrorism act, which again I kind of mentioned it in some of my previous show about it, but it is quite interesting to see that it's actually happening in our doorstep.
Yeah, he was. I laugh now because of how funny it is. Oh,
Mm.
you have to laugh so you don't cry in some ways. And Bernard Randall's not the only one, actually. I would also highlight Aaron Edwards, who was a professor at a Bible college, who tweeted on homosexuality invading the church, and he was fired from his Bible college for
Wow.
doing that. And he was also referred to the same counter-terrorism unit. But with Bernard Randall. Yeah, I mean, we're at a place in society, like I said before, where we believe that men can become women and women can become men, and we also believe that preaching from the Bible that marriage is between one man and one woman is so harmful a message for society that it puts people at risk, and we need to protect the public from hearing such things. And so, anyone who believes that and dares to proclaim it needs to be locked up. Now, thankfully, we our legal center, our fantastic legal center, were able to work with Bernard and take that one to the
Mm,
court. Um, and his
mm,
charges have since been dropped. You can imagine the turmoil that's had on Bernard himself, and
yes.
just only in recent weeks has he opened up. I believe he spoke to the Telegraph
Mm,
just this month or last month about the distress that it's caused him and his family after the way he's been treated, um, ultimately by the school, by the Church of England, by being referred to counterterrorism. You can imagine the damage that could do on a
mm.
man who's just trying to be faithful to the Bible. But yes, in answer to your question, it referred to counterterrorism for proclaiming the fact that the Bible teaches marriage is between one man and one woman, which means, I mean, if you think about that further and follow that thought thread, Jesus himself would need to be referred to counterterrorism, wouldn't he?
It's true. It's
Hmm.
true. It is quite interesting. There's nothing new under the sun, as the Word of God says, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we are seeing the testimony of it. I mean, I just want to look at some of the other cases. I just got into the potential if we can actually have a look in the website and maybe just briefly look at some of
Yeah.
the cases. And then for our listeners, if you have any question, please feel free to do so. We're trying to answer your question as best that we possibly can. But yeah, if you have any question, please just use your chat box here, and then whatever you are on YouTube, Facebook, and even on Zoom, if you are, just use the chat box and then just write your question, and we will try to answer them. So looking back into the website here that we have, so I'm gonna go through the cases first, and then potentially maybe pick up a couple of those ones as well. So we spoke about obviously Bernard Randall, which is here. We can see it here as well in the Uxbridge Street Ministry. There's
Mm.
one that I'm actually particularly interested in, and that's obviously we've got the Darlington nurses. What is it with the one with the Anna one? Is still ongoing. Is this something that you can potentially tell us about?
Hannah? Is that one in the middle there, Hannah?
Yeah, Anna, the Anna one.
Yes, well, it's interesting that you raised that one actually, because she is from the same county as Bernard Brandel, and so her legal case and her court hearings has had to go through the same court that Bernard Brandel's had to go through, and I won't go through the details here for your listeners because it might take too long, but it's very interesting to read about the crossover that Bernard Brandel and Hannah have experienced. These Christians that are being faithful in their own fields and being persecuted for declaring Christian truths and being sent through the court systems for that.
Mm.
Um, and Again, I would just encourage your supporters to read on Hannah's case, and you would be very interested to see some overlap with Bernard Randall and how certain rulings in Hannah's case have informed rulings in Bernard's case, and vice versa. But Hannah, she is a teaching assistant, I believe,
Mm.
and her case has also been kicked down the road for various reasons. But she, if my memory serves me correctly, was at school one day when a child was going by a different gender to what their biological sex was, and Hannah, by her conscience, couldn't say something that wasn't true, and so um, maybe the child was biologically a male and wanting to be called a female. Maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember now. But Hannah, which isn't her real name, her name's been suppressed in the courts. She properly gendered the child by their biological sex, and
Mm.
she faced punishment for that, and she was also removed from the school, and
Wow.
she had to reach out to us to defend her.
Mm. How long this case has been going on for now?
I think her one has dragged on a little bit as well. I don't know if it's quite as old as Bernard's, but I want to say that it's been maybe 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
Uh, Her case page would give the exact dates for that. Our case pages for all our clients
Mm.
identify all the dates when the incidents take place, when the hearings take place, and hopefully eventually when the victory comes by
Mm.
God's goodness. But if you just scroll down a little bit. Um, oh, sorry, on Hannah's case page, I
Oh,
meant
sorry. Let me just
if you
get back
click on
to
her
it.
page,
Yeah.
scroll down. I think there you go, 2021, so 4 years.
Wow.
Um, she labels the child by their correct gender, and she
Mm.
suffers the punishment for that.
The, the,
Um,
the
yeah,
interesting thing is the child is 8 years old, you know, when you think about it.
I
It,
know, I know.
it is,
We're
it's
It's
madness.
one thing. It's one thing, isn't it, Jean-Marc, to say that
Mm.
men can become women and women can become men. It's an entirely different thing to teach that to children. And
Mm.
I before I was a Christian Concern, I can't remember if I said this before. I was a youth worker.
Mm.
I worked with young people, and it's something I'm very working with young people and sharing the gospel with them is a passion dear to my heart. And
Mm.
to see children as young as 8 taught things like this. That is completely contrary, not just to the Bible, but to common sense reality and the
Mm.
damage that it brings. I mean, stories are coming to light now on social media. You may have seen them of children who were taught that they could change their gender and followed that through
Mm.
and are now suffering the physical consequences for that. It's just a tragedy.
Oh.
And Hannah rightly,
Mm.
as I would have done, um, pointed the child to the truth, but
Mm.
she suffered consequence for that. And as I say, I think her legal case is still ongoing as well. But I would
Mm.
encourage supporters to read into her case a little bit more because they'd be
Mm.
interested to see the developments and how
Mm.
it's related to Bernard Randall. I won't go into the details here, but
Mm.
it's certainly very interesting.
Another case I'm interested in is, I'm just going to put on the screen here, is Gozen Zondag. And again, can you tell us briefly about what happened? She's another school pastoral manager here in North London.
Yes, yeah, I was lucky to actually get to know Gozen at a Christian Concern
Mm.
academy a couple of years ago, and shortly after I met her, she was working in a school. I think she was a she had a chaplain role at a Catholic school for girls, and alongside that, she had a fairly successful social media account which talked about biblical womanhood.
Mm.
And if my memory serves me correctly, again, our case page will go into more details on her social media account, which had a good following. She again alluded or spoke of the truth that marriage is between one man and one woman, and then she went to her Catholic school, which is supposed to uphold the Bible.
Mm,
The next day, or some days afterwards, and she found that she'd been reported for that post, and that she couldn't continue to come into work. And yeah, another sad example, in some ways similar to Bernard Randall, working in a Christian setting, declaring biblical
mm,
truth, suffering the consequences for that. But
mm,
Gozen's a London-based social media influencer
mm,
who was sacked from her chaplaincy type role at a Catholic school for girls for sharing on social media that marriage is between a man and a woman.
mm,
Thankfully, she'd already connected with Christian Concern, and so as soon as this went down, she was able to get in touch, and
mm.
our legal team was able to come alongside her. I don't know if everything's been resolved yet. I think that's also still ongoing,
Yes, apparently, yeah. Um,
but we are
mm.
standing with her.
So the interesting thing here, as I put a page back here, I can see here all your legal cases here, and there's quite a few there. Obviously, we're not gonna talk about all of them because we'll be here for another 2 days or 3 days or maybe a few
Yeah.
weeks. But there's quite a very interesting stories here. Obviously, we spoke about Anna here, and we just mentioned Gozen here. There's
Mm,
another one which is actually really kind of draw my attention. And
mm,
again, this element of primary school. Promoting LGBT and people, just teachers, actually kind of standing up against it and then just to face the consequences of losing the job or
mm,
losing everything else. And there's another case as well, which is what's quite very interesting is, and I don't know whether you were there, is Maureen Martin. Can you tell
mm,
us briefly about Maureen Martin? She was actually a mayoral candidate and she lost a job as well.
mm. Yeah, Maureen Martin. She was slightly before my time, but I think I understand the basics of her case. She was working for a housing association, I think, and she had a very strong and impeccable record. I think it was something like 13 years she'd worked for them, and she decided to stand in the local election, I think in
Mm,
Lewisham, so Southeast London. And on her election manifesto, she also, on this topic of marriage, she also stated that she believed that marriage was between one man and one woman,
mm,
and that was for the betterment of society. She was then subsequently reported for that, and that report made it to her employers, the housing association, who promptly went on to sack her. And again, our wonderful legal team were able to come alongside her
mm,
and fight for her. And I think she won a compensation and a payout in the end. But
mm,
certainly a concerning ruling. Like I say, it was before my time, but the message that you cannot stand in an election if you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, in many
mm,
ways similar to Bernard and Aaron Edwards being referred
mm,
to counterterrorism. This sort of underlying cultural view, especially in in more influential positions, that you can't discriminate. You can't say that marriage is just between a man and a woman, because
mm,
that's hateful, and we need to broaden our mindsets. And anyone who stands on the words of God, even the words of Jesus, like I said before,
mm,
is a threat to society. And if they're not going to be referred to counterterrorism, they certainly can't stand
mm,
um, in an election, and they need to have their jobs taken away from them as well.
mm. That's fantastic. Just want to go back to your website and just to really look at some of the aspect as well. There's one aspect that we talked about. We haven't actually really mentioned it as well. Is when we're looking at the event space that you have. Obviously, there's a lot of events coming up over the next few weeks and month as well. But I want to know about the Wilberforce Academy. What is it exactly?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I'm glad you brought that up. The Wilberforce Academy is where I met Gozen, who we just talked about, the chaplain from the Catholic school.
Mm,
The Wilberforce Academy is designed for adults. Young adults. It's a residential training program, discipleship program, a week-long intensive. Um, usually it's a university location where these delegates, usually from university age up until young adulthood, mid-30s, and we'll gather together for a week on site, spend the week on site, and be discipled by Christian thinkers and theologians, Christian activists like in Andrea's case,
mm,
and taught how to bring the hope of Jesus and how to work in their vocation, whether their vocation is in IT or in the arts and the musics, in academics and education, whatever their vocation is, how they can have that vocation informed by their Christian worldview and bring their Christianity to the table and serve God and honor Him with the gifts that they've given them. Um, where God has placed them. And so once a year, this Wilberforce Academy will take place, and young adults will come and learn and be discipled in community together by one another, encouraging one another, but also taught by more senior Christian thinkers, which you can learn about. There's a specific website for it, www.wilberforcecollective.org. And the great thing about the Wilberforce Collective is that it's not just a week. The week in itself is the entry point into something that we call the Wilberforce Collective. And so you're trained for a week, you're discipled, you're sent out to go into your vocation and serve the Lord in the most God glorifying way possible. But you will enter in to this collective where you join a community of people from who did the Wilberforce Academy the year behind you, or who did the Wilberforce Academy 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and who will do the Wilberforce Academy the next year. And so we are building a collective movement of young people who are obviously very talented in the gifts that God has given them, but also very passionate about serving the Lord with those gifts. And so for any young people that you know or are watching this stream, we would encourage you strongly to check it out and to consider applying and joining with us as we together with more young people interested in Christianity, as the reports say, seek to bring
and an influx of
Jesus.
Gen Z into the churches now at the moment, which is we're very good, especially when we can see God is doing something. Some of the question I wanted to ask you as we wrapping up now our show this evening, and obviously we talked about a little bit of the organization, and I just really wanted to get back into your website and just touch on the team really, which is involved. How many of you are involved at the moment in a Christian Concern? Because obviously here, as you can see on the website, we've got the founders, Andrea, which I met years ago, and then also obviously Pastor Ade Amoba as well. But this is the core team. But in terms general, what is it? Are you about 20, 25? Is it? What's the numbers?
It depends on how exactly you quantify it, because our lawyers are who are part of our Christian Legal Center are officially employed by a legal firm, because to be a lawyer and to work in the courts, you have to be attached to a legal firm. And so it depends on exactly how you count our team. This page that you're on here shows our public facing team, our speakers, and our people in leadership roles who will often go out to churches, speak at conferences, speak to the media, and so on. But as a total number, everyone involved at Christian Concern, the number's probably at about 30, and that will include people on internship roles, people in our education team, in our events team, in our supporter services team, our finance team, policy team, development team, communications team, which I'm part of, and our front of house team, and then our more senior management teams as well. And as I say, this page is for our more public facing figures. Andrea Williams is our CEO, and she co-founded the organization with Ade Amuba, as you can see there. We call him Pastor Ade, and he's been very effective in church ministry for a long time. Andrea, by her background, is a barrister, and so that would explain for your listeners the reason that we've been able to also develop the Christian Legal Center and help so many Christians in that space. Tim Dieppe, also worth your viewers getting familiar with his work. He joined Christian Concern after encountering some challenges with Islam in his career in finance, and so that's his particular interest. And Tim's already written a couple of books on the nature of Islam, the challenge of Islam in the UK, engaging Muslims in the UK. But Tim heads up our public policy team, and he doesn't just work on Islam, though that is his particular interest. He's involved in all our issues, and trying to engage MPs and speak to the media about the Christian position. And Steve Beagle, as you see there, he's our head of education. There is a movement building in the UK, not just of young adults, but also of new Christian schools, as we seek to disciple the next generation and deal with the problem of certain things being taught in schools that parents are concerned about, just like with Bernard Brandel or Gozen. We Christians need to respond to that, and so Steve Bigu heads up our education team and is really also coming alongside our new Christian schools and initiatives that are just starting to spring up now, within the last year or so. And Rebecca Benstead there, she heads up our legal centre as well. Andrea, as I said, is a barrister by training, but she is CEO of the whole organisation. Rebecca, who you see there, focuses on our legal centre, and she herself is a barrister. And so these people here on screen are our key public-facing members who will look good for the cameras, but as I say, our team is bigger, and I think we're at about 30, and we're really blessed at Christian Concern to have really talented people and from all backgrounds, but who love the Lord Jesus, who serve Him diligently and store up treasure in heaven for themselves.
That's wonderful. And is there anything else that you want potentially add to us in terms of what you're working on? And is there any organization, anything that you guys are looking over the next few years? Obviously, one of the things is quite important. I need to remind us listeners that in terms of those legal cases cost money. And so to kind of sustain on those people that come to you for cases, obviously you get a lot of donation, I would imagine, and the support of different organizations as well. What's the plan for the future? Because it's been running for quite a long time, and obviously there seem to be more and more cases that you guys are working on because there's more people that are being discriminated for their faith in that sense. So what do you expect over the next few years?
Yeah. Well, I think we began in 2008, and so it's coming up 20 years and not too long. And as you say, we are entirely supporter funded, and we depend on generous giving. And so also, as you say, the work is growing. Legal cases take a long time, and so that means that cases pile up. It's a lot harder to clear cases than it is to take them on board. And so our work is growing. There's so much to do, so much to advocate for, not just with our legal centre, but also in Parliament and with policy and on social media. And so we found that with the need to defend Christianity in this nation, the work is always growing, not just the caseload, but also people becoming more familiar with us, learning about clients like the Darlington nurses and Bernard Brandel. So I would also point listeners to follow us on social media, and you can really track the work that we do there, and subscribe to our mailing list. We send out regular emails. We have a newsletter that goes out every Friday that keeps supporters up to date with what's going on in this nation. And so that would be my encouragement, is to hopefully see the need for an organization like Christian Concern and to partner with us. And if you're not able to give, that's fine. To partner with us on social media and track what's going on, so that you can see the state that the state of the nation, and you can be informed about that, so that you yourself can not just partner with us, but also go out yourself and proclaim the hope of Jesus, which everyone needs to hear, regardless of where they are.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, thank you very much again for really being with us this evening, and for taking your time. And hopefully we will continue to follow the work of Christian Concern and really send all those notes. And for those who are listening, please do follow them on their social platform, as Sean mentioned it as well. I think it'd be great for us to, as he mentioned, to support in any way that we possibly can in that sense. So Sean, thank you again for everything. Wonderful.
John Mark, thank you for having me.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye.
So that was Sean from Christian Concern, and I hope that you guys had a very good time. Just to remind you as well, some of our videos that we've been launching, a series that we'll be launching on end times, specifically we'll be beginning to walk into the book of Revelation from chapter 2 verse 12 17 at the moment. That's where we are. So this video will be available on Monday. We also be working on another topic, which is a system of the Antichrist, and we are looking at the law of attraction. Will be coming in a couple of weeks. So if you want to see or watch all those videos, please feel free to watch them. They're all online. They're all on our YouTube channel as well. So please feel free to access them. And I hope that you had a great time today. I've been blessed to hear from Christian Concern, especially from Sean. And again, we shall see you again next time for our next Fireside Chat, next month in September. Ciao.